All right, so yesterday I introduced you to Patrick Henry and we talked about logos, pathos, and ethos. Today, at the end of class, or actually in probably about 20, 30 minutes, you're going to be working on something that's going to help define some of his elements of those three, one of those, a couple of those three things in an exercise. It's basically filling out a chart, putting in some quotes, and telling me what you think about those quotes. So I'll show you that in just a few minutes. But I wanted to show you something real quick. I thought about persuasion and persuasion techniques, and I remembered several years ago I found a book someplace that was called The Art of Persuasion. So I typed that into Google, and I really wasn't looking for the book. I just wanted to see what I would find when I typed in The Art of Persuasion, because persuasion is an art form. Persuasion is something that we all do. Even if you don't even think about it, when you're asking for something, you're trying to persuade somebody to give you either an affirmative or some sort of answer. You are trying to make a case for whatever you need. So I typed in The Art of Persuasion. I've got 46.6 million results in Google, because Google is what Google does. So I thought that was interesting. I saw 6 universal methods that would help you master the art of persuasion. That wasn't the book that I was thinking about. I think the book I found, wherever it was something that, somebody was trying to make money off of it. Hey, you too can have the ultimate life if you just know the art of persuasion. $29.95, it will make it all yours. You will be, the greatest orator, the greatest speaker, the greatest persuader in all of history. I don't know if that's what his case was, but it is pretty close. We do need to be masters at getting people to do things. Maybe not manipulating them, but suppose you try to go and buy a car. At some point in your life, you're going to want something from someone. And hopefully you won't just take the sticker price as the price, although I think the automobile industry and the dealers have tried to convince us that the sticker price is the actual price. So there are ways to negotiate, persuade for a lower price, and hopefully you'll be able to do that when you go to buy a car or almost buy anything of significance. There's sometimes a price, especially if you use Craigslist or something like that to buy used goods and things. There's always some sort of negotiation. All right, so I got to thinking about it, and so I said, well, I'll do YouTube, because I feel like we're visual people. We like to see things a lot more than we just like to read it or look at it. So I went to YouTube and did Art of Persuasion, and I found the science of persuasion. Okay, so science, that sounds important. I can deal with that. So now there's something to back it up. I don't necessarily know where this is from. I do see that it's Influence at Work, whoever this guy is. Dr. Robert Cialdini, Professor Emeritus of Psychology and Marketing, Arizona State University. All right, so I don't know who that is, but he's Professor Emeritus. That means he's probably retired or something like that. He's got a significant, or held a significant position at Arizona State University. And I'm telling you that because part of what you're going to see today is me, I'm introducing you to this video by using this guy here and giving you his credibility. There's something important to that. This guy is smart, right? He knows what he's talking about. So there's a couple of guys that put this video together. I'm sorry about the ad that's probably about to play. Oh, maybe not. I'm going to stop it right here. I'm also going to put it on the screen behind me. And I know that you guys, if you're not sharing your screen right now, if you've hit the escape key and kind of doing your own thing, please go back to the share screen so you can see the video that I'm putting up on the screen. Because I want to tie this in to Patrick Henry, to see if he unknowingly used what these guys are saying is a scientific method. There's going to be 6, I held up 3, but there's going to be 6 shortcuts, is what they call them, about persuasive techniques. So it's an interesting video. Again, I'm going to stop it in a couple of locations and go, I see that in Patrick Henry's speech. Hopefully everyone has read the speech at this moment, and we'll go from there. And I need to make sure I can see everybody on, look, okay, there we go, admit. Because I know the thing isn't even there anymore. Yeah, okay. So so before we start, hey, I know you just missed all that coming into Zoom. There wasn't a lot there. We're just going to look at persuasive techniques, and this video has 6 scientific methods or 6 shortcuts, and I'm going to see if we can identify those if they were used by Patrick Henry or something like that. And he would not have known these shortcuts because Patrick Henry was just that good. All right. So, and this video is created by a Dr. Cianini, or I can't remember the name of it right now, and I had it up there, but Professor Emeritus, Arizona State University. So we know that there's some credibility with this video. So here we go.
Researchers have been studying the factors that influence us to say yes to the requests of others for over 60 years, and there can be no doubt that there's a science to how we are persuaded, and a lot of this science is surprising. When making a decision, it would be nice to think that people consider all the available information in order to guide their thinking, but the reality is very often different. In the increasingly overloaded lives we lead, more than ever, we need shortcuts or rules of thumb to guide our decision-making. My own research has identified just 6 of these shortcuts as universals that guide human behavior. They are reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus.
All right, anybody want to write those down real quick? I'm just kidding. You don't have to write them down. You can probably take a screenshot or whatever, but there's not going to be a test on it. I just want you to be familiar with reciprocity, scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, and consensus. And how often we do this every day. You know, reciprocity, he's going to talk about, he'll give you the definitions and things, but think about this too. We're not just looking at it from the point of Patrick Henry and trying to identify that, but think about these things that we do and how often we do them in order to get what we want.
Understanding these shortcuts and employing them in an ethical manner can significantly increase the chances that someone will be persuaded by your request. Let's take a closer look at each in turn.
So, the first universal principle of influence is reciprocity. Simply put, people are obliged to give back to others the form of behavior, gift, or service that they have received first. If a friend invites you to their party, there's an obligation for you to invite them to a future party you are hosting.
Right? So, I mean, we know that. So, here's the first thing about Patrick Henry that we notice. Mr. President, no one knows more, okay, I can't do it from memory, but he said to the patriotism, no one knows more about the patriotism and the very worthy gentleman than I do. So he's making a comparison between himself, but causing the people that are standing against him or speaking for the other way, he's kind of giving them something. He's giving them credibility. So that's the first thing. He's given them something, and now it's kind of causing them to give that back to him, at least in respect and to listen.
If a colleague does you a favor, then you owe that colleague a favor. And in the context of a social obligation, people are more likely to say yes to those that they owe. One of the best demonstrations of the principle of reciprocation comes from a series of studies conducted in restaurants.
Okay, so if you are a waiter, waitress, or anybody that's in the restaurant industry as a part-time job or something like that, and you try to work for tips and other things, and even if you're a part of that organization, or can be at one time, take note of this. And it's not just restaurants, but the statistics that they're about to show were really pretty interesting. So follow along.
So the last time you visit a restaurant, there's a good chance that the waiter or waitress will have given you a gift. Probably at about the same time that they bring your bill. A liqueur perhaps, or a fortune cookie, or perhaps a simple mint. So here's the question. Does the giving of a mint have any influence over how much tip you're going to leave them? Most people will say no, but that mint can make a surprising difference. In the study, giving diners a single mint at the end of their meal typically increased tips by around 3%. Interestingly, if the gift is doubled and 2 mints are provided, tips don't double. They quadruple, a 14% increase in tips. But perhaps most interestingly of all is the fact that if the waiter provides 1 mint, starts to walk away from the table, but pauses, turns back, and says, "For you nice people, here's an extra mint," tips go through the roof. A 23% increase, influenced not by what was given, but how it was given. So the key to using the principle of reciprocation is to be the first to give and to ensure that what you give is personalized and unexpected.
The second universal principle of persuasion is scarcity. Simply put, people want more of those things they can have less of. When British
All right, so I wanted to pause right when he said British, and I'm hearing some other things in here, so I think I'm allowing the computer to catch up, so I don't know what's happening. But what is going to be very scarce in Patrick Henry's time if the British get their way? What's going to be scarce? What's he really saying? It's freedom, right? So we want our freedom, and they're asking for freedom, and the British said, sure, we'll give you our freedom as long as you can supply and support and be subjected to our military. So Patrick Henry is saying freedom is going to be very scarce, and that's going to tug at some heartstrings in our thing. So this is one of those shortcuts that he seems to actually use.
Airways announced in 2003 that they would no longer be operating the twice-daily London-New York Concorde flight because it had become uneconomical to run, sales the very next day took off. Notice that nothing had changed about the Concorde itself. It certainly didn't fly any faster, the service didn't suddenly get better, and the airfare didn't drop. It had simply become a scarce resource, and as a result, people wanted it more. So when it comes to effectively persuading others using the scarcity principle, the science is clear. It's not enough simply to tell people about the benefits they'll gain if they choose your products and services. You'll also need to point out what is unique about your proposition and what they stand to lose if they...
So what does the Patrick Henry group stand to lose? What does America during that time, the colonies that during that time stand to lose? And it's their freedom. It's the very thing that they're asking for.
failed to consider your proposal.
Our third principle of influence is the principle of authority, the idea that people follow the lead of credible, knowledgeable experts. Physiotherapists, for example, are able to persuade more of their patients to comply with recommended exercise programs if they display their medical diplomas on the walls of their consulting rooms. People are more likely to give change for a parking meter to a complete stranger if that requester wears a uniform rather than casual clothes. What the science is telling us is that it's important to signal to others what makes you a credible, knowledgeable authority before you make your influence attempt. Of course, this can present problems. You can hardly go around telling potential customers how brilliant you are, but you can certainly arrange for someone to do it for you. And surprisingly, the science tells us that it doesn't seem to matter if the person who introduces you is not only connected to you, but also likely to prosper from the introduction themselves. One group of real estate agents were able to...
All right, before we talk about the real estate agents, remember what I did right before the video to give this video credibility. I announced the author, or at least the professor emeritus that was at least mentioned for this video as far as YouTube. So what does that do? It gives this video a little bit of credibility. If I had did this video, Ross Whitfield, YouTube video, persuasion, the credibility is gone unless somebody sets it up for me, and I just happen to be the foremost expert in the world on scientific study of persuasion, which I am not. But if someone adds that he has 20 years of speaking to people persuasively, that's going to be some other credibility. So how does Patrick Henry establish his credibility? he identifies with the other members of that house. I mean, of course he does. I mean, he's already elected there, and his credibility, they know. But he also, and you'll see how he does it too on one of the other shortcuts. He really puts himself or meets them on their level. So I think that's very important too.
Increase both the number of property appraisals and the number of subsequent contracts that they wrote by arranging for reception staff who answered customer inquiries to first mention their colleagues' credentials and expertise. So, customers interested in letting a property were told, lettings? Let me connect you with Sandra, who has over 15 years' experience letting properties in this area. Customers who wanted more information about selling properties were told, speak to Peter, our head of sales. He has over 20 years' experience selling properties. I'll put you through now. The impact of this expert introduction led to a 20% rise in the number of appointments and a 15% increase in the number of signed contracts. Not bad for a small change informed from persuasion science that was both ethical and costless to implement.
The next principle is consistency. People like to be consistent with the things they have previously said or done. Consistency is activated by looking for and asking for small initial commitments that can be made. In one famous set of studies, researchers found, rather unsurprisingly, that very few people would be willing to erect an unsightly wooden board on their front lawn to support a Drive Safely campaign in their neighborhood. However, in a similar neighborhood close by, 4 times as many homeowners indicated that they would be willing to erect this unsightly billboard. Why? Because 10 days previously, they had agreed to place a small postcard in the front window of their home that signaled their support for a Drive Safely campaign. That small card was the initial commitment that led to a 400% increase in a much bigger but still consistent change. So, when seeking to influence using the consistency principle, the detective of influence looks for voluntary, active, and public commitments and ideally gets those commitments in writing. For example, one recent study reduced missed appointments at health centers by 18%, simply by asking the patients rather than the staff to write down appointment details on the future appointment card.
The fifth principle is the principle of liking. People prefer to say yes to those that they like. But what causes one person to like another? Persuasion science tells us that there are 3 important factors. We like people who are similar to us, we like people who pay us compliments, and we like people who cooperate with us towards mutual goals.
All right, so this is a part where I'm seeing Patrick Henry all over this. I don't know about the cooperation part, but the similar goals was to come to a consensus about the militia. So good or bad. So and he said at the end that he's still going to be, the give me liberty, give me death thing. He's very passionate about it. He'd rather die than subjugate himself to the British. But people who are similar to us, the very worthy gentleman, he started the whole part, the patriotism, talking about that, and then the compliments that was there for the people that were against him. So he is totally committed to this. So do they like him? Do they dislike him? They probably did not dislike him. Although that sounds like that's a double negative right there, but it's unlikely that they hated him. So it's something to think about. This is a principle that we all can do, especially if we're going into someplace. So follow along.
As more and more of the interactions that we are having take place online, it might be worth asking whether these factors can be employed effectively in, let's say, online negotiations. In a series of negotiation studies carried out between MBA students at 2 well-known business schools, some groups were told, time is money, get straight down to business. In this group, around 55% were able to come to an agreement. A second group, however, were told, before you begin negotiating, exchange some personal information with each other. Identify a similarity you share in common, then begin negotiating. In this group, 90% of them were able to come to successful and agreeable outcomes that were typically worth 18% more to both parties. So to harness this powerful principle of liking, be sure to look for areas of similarity that you share with others and genuine compliments you could give before you get down to business.
Hey, and the key is going to be genuine compliments, not made up. It's not like if I'm going to go into Greenville Toyota and study how the guy is dressed or whatever, and then dress kind of like them when I go in, and the salesman comes up and says, "Man, I'm so glad that you came up to introduce yourself to me. I was kind of hoping that because I see the way that you're dressed, the clothes that you wear, the shoes, those look tight. Those great." I'm complimenting the guy, but am I genuine? Is it one of those genuine things? So genuine would be, hey, wow, you're a really friendly guy. I really appreciate that. Thanks for coming up immediately. So and it has to be a genuine. So thanks for paying attention to me. Because most people don't. I'm seeing that in the classroom right now. Okay, that's bad. You guys are doing great. So anyway. Back to the video.
The final principle is consensus. Especially when they are uncertain, people will look to the actions and behaviors of others to determine their own. You may have noticed that hotels often place a small card in bathrooms that attempt to persuade guests to reuse their towels and linen. Most do this by drawing a guest's attention to the benefits that reuse can have on environmental protection. It turns out that this is a pretty effective strategy, leading to around 35% compliance. But could there be an even more effective way? Well, it turns out that about 75% of people who check into a hotel for 4 nights or longer will reuse their towels at some point during their stay. So what would happen if we took a lesson from the principle of consensus and simply included that information on the cards and said that 75% of our guests reuse their towels at some time during their stay, so please do so as well. It turns out that when we do this, towel reuse rises by 26%. Now imagine the next time you stay in a hotel, you saw one of these signs. You picked it up and you read the following message. 75% of people who have stayed in this room have reused their towel. What would you think? Well, here's what you might think. I hope they're not the same towels. And like most people, you probably think that this sign will have no influence on your behavior whatsoever. But it turns out that changing just a few words on a sign to honestly point out what comparable previous guests have done was the single most effective message, leading to a 33% increase in reuse. So, the science is telling us that rather than relying on our own ability to persuade others, we can point to what many others are already doing, especially many similar others.
So there we have it, 6 scientifically validated principles of persuasion that provide for small, practical, often costless changes that can lead to big differences in your ability to influence and persuade others in an entirely ethical way. They are the secrets from the science of persuasion.
All right. So and now there's no more secrets, right? Pretty much. Hopefully I paused that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and in the next video, go to the next video, not the YouTube video, but I'm going to tell you what you're doing today. We're going to unpack the persuasive appeals of Patrick Henry. I just want you to see this. These are principles that you can use on a daily basis or take with you. And I know in 5 years from now, and maybe even 5 minutes from now, you might not remember these techniques, but what does it hurt to compliment someone? What does it hurt to say something nice and be something meaningful to somebody, especially if you're wanting something? All right, I thought I was going to click and hit finish. There we go.